Good morning, traders. Today is Wednesday, August 24th. My name is Charles, and this is the Pirate Traders live stream. All right, well, let's take a look at what's happening in the market. So obviously yesterday we had sort of a cooling off day for the market. It was still technically a continuation of the trend lower because we made lower highs, lower lows, and we had value overlapping to lower. So that is a sign that the momentum to the downside remains in the market. This current trend lower remains intact. So it's bearish in that regard, but it's not super bearish in the fact that we just kind of rotated around in a tight range. You know, if the market had a chance to cool off yesterday, maybe it can change its mind and start heading back up today. But of course, that momentum is still there. And the overnight trading lower, so just like it did the night before last, the overnight was overlapping to lower as well. That is also a further sign of continuation. But again, the same as yesterday, the fact that we are opening inside of yesterday's range means it's not quite as bearish, right? So what we're looking for here as the market gets ready to open in a few minutes is, you guessed it, chop. Okay, we've got this big node that we created right here of time and volume inside the overnight. So we're looking to see, can that hold as support? As the market opens, can they push down and then kind of start to find support and head higher? And then we're looking for resistance right in this big node from the regular trading hours yesterday. So somewhere between, I would say, like 41.26 and 41.40. That's sort of your chop zone in terms of support and resistance, where the market's likely to just kind of get stuck in here and bounce around. If it starts to break out from there, you can start to look for the market to go lower. So if we can get through 26, I would look to target testing yesterday's low, seeing can we push below there, come back up and find resistance. If we find resistance at yesterday's low, that is 41.25. I would look for continuation down to test the overnight low. If we push below yesterday's low and pull right back up into the range, then continued chop. And same thing to the upside. If we can essentially get through this node right here, I'd be looking to test the overnight high. If we can get above the overnight high and find support, I'd be looking to try to head back up towards yesterday's high. So range bound in the middle, looking for breakouts either direction if they can get it. Knowing that the highest probability is to the downside due to the fact that the momentum is still bearish on the daily. It's also possible this could be the very beginning of a balance area. A lot of times the market, when it creates excess, one way that it balances off that excess is that it just rotates sideways with time. This could be the beginning of a balance area low. If that's the case, this would be the area it would be looking to bounce around and spend that time. So whilst the momentum is to the downside, because we are still trending lower in the daily, there is a chance we go sideways here. Or actually, I guess today we would turn around and start heading back up. So let's see how that chop breaks. Make a guess. You got 2 more minutes to decide. Where do you think the market's going to go today? Is it going up, down, or sideways? I just gave you a scenario where all 3 of them are possible. I guess the biggest up scenario would be getting above yesterday's high and finding support. Then we could target filling the gap all the way up to 42.21. But I mean, miles and miles to go before that's in play. First, we got to see if we can get above the overnight high. Otherwise, the momentum is to the downside or sideways. Yesterday's low is going to be very important. 41.25, that was a poor low, so it's in need of repair. So if they repair it and then come right back up in the range, no worries. But if they get new selling down here, that is bearish for continuation lower. So keep a close eye on 41.25. And the market is open. Results are in on the survey. Uh-oh. Looks like rotation. 39% sideways, 33% down, 27% up. This market's going nowhere. Let the chop begin. So again, we got support in here, resistance in here. Looking for the market to grind between those two. If it's able to get below yesterday's low, does it find new sellers down there for continuation lower or continued chop by pulling right back up in? Corbin says NQ. Let's take a quick look at the Q. Exactly the same as the ES. Trending lower. I would say slightly less bearish. Yesterday's trade was a little bit less bearish in that it found support, in the same area as the overnight, whereas ours was the ES's was lower. And also the NQ actually made a higher low than the previous overnight last night. So again, maybe the market's trying to hammer out a bottom here for a multi-day balance. So it's still bearish, but I would say a little less bearish than the ES. Okay, so there's the repair of yesterday's low. And now the question is that all they needed? Did they just need to repair that poor reference and now they pull right back up into the range? If so, expect the chop to continue. Whereas if sellers start to pile on here, if we start to get resistance, we'll look to head down and test that overnight low. All right, that is resistance at yesterday's low. That is bearish to see. So I am now bearish, looking to test the overnight low down at around 41.11. And I will remain bearish as long as we are below the opening price. If we pass back through the opening price again, we're back in the chop zone. All right, the old is it support or is it resistance at yesterday's low game? Which way is it going to break? If it breaks above, we're back in the chop zone. If it breaks below, we're looking to head down, repair those weak references, and test the overnight low. All right, it appears to be support. Yep. Back to neutral. Sorry, guys. More chop. Well, I have to say, all this piling on right at the opening price is pretty weak. So these sellers are fixing to get squeezed, which should give us a little pop higher once we get through. Ramel, thank you for the sub. Welcome. Feel free to ask any questions if you have no clue what I'm talking about. All right, well, no short covering pop. This is chop. The buyers are trying to get some momentum to the upside, and there are sellers waiting. So now the question is, does previous resistance become support? This area around yesterday's low that was acting as support just now, or sorry, as resistance just now, does that become support? Do we pull back down and then the buyers step in there? Watching that 41.28 area. There's the short covering. Okay, we got okay taper at the high. So now we're testing that support. Can this area that was resistance become support? If so, they can head back up and try to break through. If they pass back through this, no problem, well, then we're going to get more chop. Michael, Appreciate it, man. Thank you. You're taking Jim Dalton's intensive. That'll be good. Ask lots of questions. Anything you don't understand, let the man take a stab at it. Design knob. Yeah, you can't ask him any questions. He'll just yell at you. All right, well, that is support right there around 28. So we're heading back up to test that resistance again. Finding that support around halfback is a little bit bullish, that they might be able to work their way through here. It's important to note, though, before anybody gets too excited, that we found some support. Keep in mind, value is overlapping to lower, and the trend is now down still on the daily. Lower lows and lower high. Now, does that mean that they can't flip it and reverse it right now and take it right back up? Of course they can. But just not to forget, not to fight that trend. There is momentum to the downside. Karam, how many days back is my composite profile? Right now it's set for 190. I don't really have any exact number. It's just however far back I have to go to see some volume. Yoda is gaming. How do you recognize if a new high will just pull back way lower or go higher? Do you need to look for support straight away? Or if it doesn't have any, it's more likely to drop? How do you recognize if a new high is going to pull back? Yeah, you want to look for support. Now, if you're talking about, let's say this is the high and the market's coming up and you're asking, is it going to make a new high? If it pushes above and it doesn't come back down looking for support, let's say it pushes above and it starts to build up momentum up here and it just keeps going, well, that's very bullish. That's the same thing as if it pulled down and tested the support here. But otherwise, anytime you break out above a previous high, the best way to know the breakout's going to work, meaning it's going to keep going, is if it comes back down and tests for support there. Screwball chop continues for now. We're in a chop zone and we're chopping it up. Can the buyer step in and get through the resistance? Now, one thing that's worth noting, I know I just said it was a little bit bullish that they were finding support. I'm now going to give you a reason it's a little bit bearish, just to annoy you. The taper that we're getting here at the high, this is good taper, meaning we're running out of business every time we push up, is exactly where we ran out in the overnight. So bearish isn't the right word, but that's just not bullish. And so they say, Charles, how could we have known? How could we known it was going to be like this? And I say, we go back and we look at the survey. When the market opened this morning, 40% of you thought it was going sideways, 33% down, and 27% up. We got the same number of buyers and sellers in this market. Mark, poor taper on the lower end. It's a good observation. You're correct. Increasing the odds. We need some more two-sided trade down there. Screwball. More poking at this support. Come on, buyers. Let's do it. Grab hold and we'll poke away. Man, once again, it's weak that they keep stepping in exactly at the opening price. All right, the chop continues. The support didn't hold. Chop fan, what's the Pirates' favorite letter? It's either going to be C or R. Depends what flavor of dad joke you're going for here. There it is. You'd think it'd be R, but really it's the C. Screwball, liquidation incoming. This feels very choppy to me. There's a lot of weakness in need of repair down there. And the momentum, obviously, value is lower, overlapping to lower. But I don't see a reason for it to liquidate, per se, just yet. I think it's still 50-50 buyers, sellers. Yes, let's smash that like button, as every good pirate should. Hoist the mainsail, batten down the hatches, and for Christ's sakes, push that thumbs up button. All right, so they're finding support around that zero line, bringing in some buyers. Can they get through the resistance? If they can get above 41.38, I'd be looking for them to test the overnight high at 41.42, and then see can they bring in new buyers up there. But until they get through this resistance, I'd expect we're going to head right back down to the opening price, as the chop will continue. Well, if you feel like you've seen this movie before, it's because we're right back where we just were. The chop continues. It's also worth noting both indices bounced off the 20 moving average on the 15-minute candles. So now it's time for everyone's favorite game. Does previous support become resistance? We pushed below and it acted as resistance. Then we pushed above and it acted as support. Will this area around 41.28 now become resistance again? Stay tuned to find out. Now remember, the odds are starting to stack up a little bit better for the sellers here, right, than the buyers. The buyers were trying to create support to break the momentum of the downtrend on the daily. The buyers were trying to get above the overnight high. They were trying to get back up to yesterday's high. They were trying to fight that momentum. The sellers here, who are building up the resistance, they're going with the momentum. So they have a little better chance of this working out for them. So the first question is, does this area around the opening price become resistance? If it does, and we push back below the low from yesterday, does that then hold as resistance? If so, I'm bearish once again. If we pass back through the opening price / halfback once again, more chop. Tuttle, how much volume in new areas turns it as a fresh bid to ask? No, my volume profile over here is literally contract by contract. So that's the total number of contracts traded. And over here, if you're looking at the delta between the bids and the asks, it's the exact number that traded. It's not like in blocks or anything. All right, well, passing back through the potential resistance means more chop. More indecision. More uncertainty. More gambling by short-term traders. Tuttle, how much is a new bidder and ask? No, it's so there's two ways I'm looking at the volume. Okay. I'm looking at the total number of contracts that are trading. Okay. So how much volume in total is trading in a particular area. And then I'm looking over at the ticks, which is just a different chart. And I'm seeing, are a majority of the people who are doing business right now, are they more buyers or sellers? That's what kind of gives me a clue as to whether or not, the market has more buyers or sellers at a particular moment when it's building up volume. It's not based on the number of contracts. The number of contracts just tells me how much interest there is. Whether that interest is new buyers or sellers, the ticks tell me that. Yoda, there's so much support around here that if we break down the lows of the past few days, we should drop heavily, right? Yeah. I mean, there's not a lot of support. Look at this area that we're currently, let's call those lows the last few days. Let's look at this area right here. Okay. What happened when we passed through it here? Straight through it. Here. Straight through it. Here. Straight through it. So I think you are correct. We're either going to balance here by going sideways or pulling back up with price, or continuation of the momentum to the downside on the daily. Mark footprint is not something I look at, but like every other thing, I think it probably works great if you're a master of it. I do believe that every technical analysis tool that exists does work. It wouldn't exist if it didn't work, right? Whoever was the first to figure it out wouldn't have told anyone else if it didn't do anything. So, every single technical analysis tool that exists is useful, but you have to become a master of it. You have to really be able to understand the nuances. If it's a tool that claims to be super simple and easy, well, then it's probably useless. So footprint, I think, is incredibly valuable if you're a master of it. Taper at the high once again, increasing the odds of continuated chop. Continuation. Would you read Markets in Profile or Mind Over Markets first? If I haven't read either yet, I would highly recommend both. If you're going to pick just one, Markets in Profile has everything you need. I have copies of both. Well, there you go. Yeah, do them in order. Mind over markets, then markets and profile. There'll be a lot of overlap with markets and profile, but a couple of like updated concepts and stuff. Okay, both markets smacked down by that 20 moving average once again. Short-term traders versus bots. All right, moment of truth. We got resistance from the large volume node on the cumulative and from yesterday around our POC, as well as those 20 moving average on the 15-minute candles, all acting as resistance at the same time. So if it is able to poke through and get above 38, we can look to target the overnight high. See if we can get up there. Because it's going to take quite a push to get through this resistance. Screwball, more and more buyers at higher prices. Yeah, you could say that. It's still tapering off, though. Cyrus, well, I have it set right now at 190 days, actually. But no, I don't find I really need any more detail. It'll always be like the fattest area will always be the fattest area. You know what I mean? Whether you kind of like, I know what you're talking about. Like if you shrink it down, like here, I'll just zoom out more. And you can see like the more you zoom it out, the more, clear, more punctuated the peaks are. Very easy to see. So yeah, if you used less, you would kind of be able to see them, but there's still always going to be the same area, the same level, wherever the most volume is. So I don't really ever think about that too much. I can look at it this zoomed in and still see where the absolute highest nodes are, you know? That's the support or resistance. All right, well, they're through that resistance. That's a little bit bullish to see. Now the question is, can they test that overnight high? And if so, can they bring in new buyers up here? We're now looking for this area around 41.34 to act as support if they're going to keep the momentum going. Well, there's your test of the overnight high. All right, so now right back to the game we always play when the market is chopping around. Can previous resistance, this area around 34.35 where the market was running out of steam on the way up, does that now become support? Are there buyers waiting to step in here? If we do get buyers, I would look to head back up and repair the newly weak high we just created. If we do not find support, more chop. So the buyers want to stay above the zero line from here. They don't want to pass back through it on the ticks. And the reason is that they had to work so hard to get through that resistance. They had to work so hard to get up here at these levels. They couldn't even get above the overnight high. So if they run out of buyers now and those ticks start to pass back below the zero line, it's proof that they just have no momentum. So if they are going to push higher here, they need to keep those ticks trending to the upside. Got to pump those ticks. Screwball, it's building volume higher and higher again. It's new buyers. Yes, sir. But again, the taper. It's like the buyers are winning, but just barely. Like, just barely. To truly get me bullish, I got to see them push above the overnight high and find support above it. This is a little bit bullish. You're right. New buyers at a higher price. But I just don't like that taper. That taper makes me fear for chop. All right, so we got one more week reference up here at 41.4350 in need of repair. Looking for just a few more ticks of excess. All right, I hate this because there's bullish signals here, but also why the heck couldn't they just repair that week high? Twice in a row, week high. The sellers smacked them down so easy. But at this point, I'd be willing to say if we can get support right here, if we can get support around 40 right now, that I would consider that support at the overnight high, and that would get me bullish for continuation higher. Also, if the C period now pushes above the B period high, we are one time framing higher, and that would get me bullish for continuation to the upside. But I just feel like the market hasn't quite proved it yet that they can continue. Part of me is afraid they just need to repair this weakness, and then they're going to fail right back in. So if we get support here at 40, bullish for continuation. If we start trending, bullish for continuation. Or if we pull back down to the base of the B period single prints at 41.34 and find support, bullish for continuation. But I got to see one of those three things first before I change that banner green. With that, I bid you all farewell. Thank you so much for joining. Really appreciate it. Special thanks to the 102 of you, less than half of you, who were willing to give me a little thumbs up, a little push of the like button. I really appreciate that. And I look forward to seeing you all here tomorrow morning. Have a great rest of your day. And if you're in the brigade, let's ride.